For alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works, it really does. Chapter 6, Into Action, page 85 and page 87 through 88. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Tom. And with that, help me welcome our speaker, Devin C. from Brooklyn, New York.
You're all going to have to bear with me as I feel like I'm croaking up here. But good evening, everybody. My name is Devin. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm really happy to be here. And thank you, Teddy. So I couldn't resist. But no, for real, I want to echo everything you just said, because I've been a part of the back end of putting conferences together. And there's a lot of things that you just don't understand necessarily go into it if you're just here attending it. And it's my experience of coming into AA. I didn't think about how AA happened. I just had a meeting to go to. And so for us that are on the experience of helping put these things on and are showing up, the joy of putting it on, the joy of you being here is the reward. But it is a lot of work. And I've been here now 2 years in a row, and I think you guys do a really great job. And the thing that I'm most excited about is the message of recovery that ends up happening. And what I've been able to sit back and listen to a bunch of my friends today, they make me not feel alone. And maybe some of you can relate to that if you do catch fire here and get really excited about what this program's about. You might find that not everybody else around you, in fact, most people around you in your community may not catch fire also, and they might look at you like you're a heretic. And sometimes I do feel like I'm a bit of a heretic because I actually have a vested interest in living this program. And I've gotten to really experience some truly remarkable things. So before I jump into 10 and 11, I would like to say I do have a home group. As you said, I'm in Brooklyn, New York. My home group's called No Serenity Till Brooklyn. I'm not responsible for the name, but you know. My first meeting there was the 3-year anniversary, and I believe this year we are celebrating 15 years? 14 years. So I've been in that group for 10 or 11 years. I've kind of lost count. We have 4 meetings a week. I'm usually there Sunday morning. I'll be there tomorrow. And Monday night we have a big book speaker meeting. There's also a Thursday evening meditation meeting and a Saturday night call-up participation and speaker meeting. And if you just happen to find yourself around central Brooklyn, like Grand Army Plaza, or the Brooklyn Museum, please look us up, get my info, let me know. I'd love to have you at the group. And it is really cool, because that group, I don't feel like a crazy person. We have a lot of people that are actually really interested in living this program. I do have a sobriety date. It happens to be August 28th of 2011. As most people, if you were here for the earlier steps, and kind of everyone, because we all kind of have the ability to talk a little bit about our experience, that's not the day I quit drinking. I don't know about your experience, but I tried to quit drinking a bunch, and the reality is every time I made the decision to stop, I started again. August 20th of 2011 was the day that I was surrendered. And what that looked like was I was broken enough, and I was suicidal, and I did not have really any hope of how I was going to keep living. I had been coming to AA meetings for about 3 months. I had been welcomed into the fellowship. If you come to an AA meeting and you say, I'm new, And at least in Brooklyn where we're at, if you raise your hand and say, I got like one day and I'm new, like you're gonna have a bunch of people who wanna come talk to you. And that's what happened to me. And people came up to me and they said, hey, my name's Joe and I'm Tom, take my phone number, call me if you want tomorrow. I'm going to this meeting over here at 7 o'clock. We can meet up beforehand and get coffee and I can take you in and introduce you to some people. And that was extended. The hand of AA was extended to me from the very beginning with the fellowship. But I would hear things like, hey, just, don't drink between meetings and always know when your next meeting is. And it was almost like the message that I could hear. And I'm not sure if this was the message that was being shared. But the message that I heard was, I just need to keep getting to the next meeting. And if you have a mind like me, I'd sit in the meeting and I go, well, I made it to this meeting. Can we talk about how to recover now? Because I'm here now. And the problem is I would leave the meeting and I would get wasted every single time. And so for months, I showed up to a bunch of meetings and I was in a blackout almost every single night, to the point where when I got a year, my roommate, who was also relatively new and just had a year, patted me on the back and said, 2-Day Devin finally has a year. And I found out that I've been nicknamed 2-Day Devin, because that was, the guy who's coming to the meeting every day. Who's got it under 30 days? Oh, Devin, alcoholic, 2 days. I'd be too sick to make it, I guess, on day 1, but I could make it to day 2. But so, I have alcoholism, and we've heard it talked about enough, so I'm not gonna belabor it. But I've had that experience where, alcohol touched me at a deeper level than anything else had up to that point. It removed this undercurrent of dis-ease that I had in the world of myself. Those fears that I had that were just nonstop started to wash away. And it did for me what nothing else had done up until that point. And so it's not a big leap logically for me to understand why I became so obsessed with drinking. It really was a solution to my problem. My problem was I don't know how to be a human being. I don't know how to live sober. And so early on, when I started getting introduced to treatment at 18, and there were some consequences and families starting to get a little worried about what's going on, from my point of view, my family telling me I should get sober seemed like they were attacking me. Their idea was that I should live this miserable existence, because my experience of sobriety was miserable. That's why I'm drinking. That's why I'm trying to blot out the intolerable consciousness of every single day of my life, is because I don't know how to be comfortable in my own skin. I don't know how to talk to you. I don't know how to make a friend. I don't know how to do anything. And alcohol was a way for me to be able to start doing those things and feel like I could participate and join the rest of the life around me. A lot of people, I heard my buddy said this once, and he said, isn't it funny when you talk to non-alcoholics, they talk about drinking to escape. And some of us might drink to escape, but I also look at my experience, like I tried to drink to join in, because I always felt so disconnected from everybody else, and now I had a vehicle that allowed me to start making fun of you when you made fun of me, and not caring what you thought, and do all this other stuff. So it's not a big leap for me to guess, why did I become obsessed with alcohol? I've never drank socially. I've never wanted to have one. I can't remember who said it earlier, but it's like I think it was Andy. It's like I drink to get drunk. I don't know why you would do this otherwise. My wife starts drinking and forgets she's drinking. Anyone ever seen that before? She forgets the glass of wine in the kitchen. It's halfway drunk, and I'll come an hour later, and there's the half-drunk glass of wine. I'm like, hey, did you want this? Oh, wine, right. I mean, it could have been orange juice, right? But to her, it's alcohol. It's a totally different experience. And so if you're able to observe non-alcoholics in the wild, and you're able to kind of get a feel for what normal looks like, it's pretty stunning. And for me, it was really helpful to understand how crazy my relationship to alcohol was when I started living with someone who's non-alcoholic, who isn't even close to a hard drinker. But so I came to AA, I came here suicidal. I think most people, I came here pending felony charges in another state. I came here with, some stuff. I think we all come here with some stuff. I don't subscribe to, if you ended up in AA, you obviously belong. I think there's a lot of people that end up in AA because of the stuff, but aren't powerless over alcohol. I happen to be one of those people that am powerless over alcohol. And what ultimately happened on August 20th of 2011 was no high drama ending. I just walked into a room, and you ever seen the old TVs with the antenna, and you turn it on, it was just a static, like the ants running across the screen? Or if you're I turn on my car right now in Delaware, and whatever radio station is the automatic, there's just static. It was like that in my brain. I remember sitting at a meeting for 55 minutes, and it was just static noise, I was devoid of thought, just broken. In this particular meeting, they said, is there somebody that has a burning desire? Feels like if they don't share, they're going to hurt themselves, hurt somebody else, take a drink, get high, do something like they need to talk about. And my experience was my hand raised, and it was almost like I saw the dude point at me, and it was kind of like I was listening to somebody else share. You ever had that thing where I was like in the meeting, but it was not like I was thinking about what I was saying. I was like hearing the words coming out of my mouth, and what I said was, I'm screwed and I don't know what to do. But if I'm not surrounded by you people or another one of these meetings, I'm going to be drunk and high later. It's going to happen. It's been happening every single night. And they had to do some other stuff with their script, and then we stood up and said a prayer. And I didn't grow up with religion. I didn't grow up with the idea that prayer was a thing to do. I never really had a spiritual practice of any kind. But I'm holding hands with some strangers in a church after saying that, and I got this little chill down my spine feeling, that little tingle, that little jolt. And, music gave me that as a kid. And I always knew at some point that maybe I just followed that. I never questioned, is there something for me with this? Because I have a physical reaction to it. And here I was in an AA meeting, holding hands with strangers, saying a prayer, and I got this same feeling. And the message I got that day was, this is for you. And I can tell you that AA's been for me ever since. That's the day I became a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am today a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I first was exposed to this at 18. I went to a bunch of meetings. I had no desire to stop drinking. I look back on that now and realize I didn't even qualify to be a member. I attended your meetings, but I didn't want to stop. But that was the day where for the first time in my life I understood the truth about me, which is the truth about me is I will take a drink under any circumstance, no matter what, and I can't stop it. But because I had seen y'all, and I come to believe that you seem to stay sober. And you guys, I started to hear your stories and believe you weren't lying to me. I used to think AA meetings would happen in Williamsburg and North Brooklyn, and you guys would get together to see if I would show up and then lie to me. It took me a minute before I realized, these are actually real people that are showing up, and their lives might be on the line. And I'm hearing their stories, and I'm identifying with their stories, and they're staying sober, and I'm in a blackout every night. So my initial first step experience was, for the first time in my life, I understood that I have this problem. I will drink. I admitted it to me for the first time in my life on August 28th of 2011. The other bit of hope that I had gotten was from y'all. And I would invite anybody, I don't know if we have anybody new, but I would invite, if someone's been struggling and on that relapse thing, I would just ask you to go, why do you keep coming to AA then if you don't think it's going to help you? How many times do you see the guy that keep coming in and they want to argue, or if somebody wants to argue about God? And I'm like, dude, is it possible? Why would you come to AA if you don't think it might help? Is it possible you actually have already had a second step experience where you might believe that this is a power greater than you that could help you? You might not know how it's going to work or what it's going to do, but you seem to keep showing up to the meeting and you keep coming to us. Maybe you've already had a little bit of an opening of that window. And to me, that's what it was. I saw you guys staying sober. I don't know if I'll stay sober, but I think you guys seem to be able to do that. And then I got the tingle thing, and I was like, all right, I'm in. And I've been in ever since. And I can't explain that. And I don't, the first couple of weeks, I didn't actively go, oh, the obsession to drink has been removed. This is great. I didn't have words for it. I just knew that something was different. Our book talks about it. A great experience, sometimes very great, was felt at once. At the end of that third step. And that's what I had. In North Brooklyn at the time, sponsorship looked like you'd read the 12 and 12 a lot of the time with people. And I don't know any better. And I'm not judging anybody that does that. I know some really great people that's all they've ever done. They've read the 12 and 12, and they've sponsored people out of the 12 and 12, and you know what? They're happy and sober. So how am I going to argue with that? Isn't that the goal? You're sober and you're happy? All right, great. But there was a moment where I started to go, I don't know if this, what am I doing here? I got enamored with the fellowship. I loved y'all. I loved the meetings. I loved the fellowship. I did everything this first guy that I'd asked to help or sponsor me had suggested. I had written something for an inventory. I had shared that with him. I had done, some basis of amends. And then I stumbled into this world of speaker tapes by accident. And I started to hear old-timers and people that were doing what we're doing today. People that had some real concrete experiences working this 12-step program and applying it to their lives that were able to articulate this program in a way that I started to go, I'm not hearing this in the meetings around the corner. I'm not hearing this anywhere. Where is this? And I started to get connected to and find some of these people, and I got an opportunity to get in touch with a guy who was probably 28 years sober, and his whole thing was he just took people through the steps. And I called this man and I said, hey, I'd like to do the steps with you if you're willing to do that. And he basically laid out, like, this will go as quickly as you're willing to do it. And, if you're ready to turn, see your life change and never look back, then, like, let's get cracking. And he said, you can read the book later. We're going to do the steps. And then I want you to go back and see if you have an experience reading the book where all those promises that they said happened to them, you'd be able to find out if they're actually happening to you. But realize they wrote the book from the position of having had done the steps. So if you read it by yourself and you're new, half of it's going to sound like this really flowery, over-the-top spiritual mumbo-jumbo, because it's not going to make any sense if you're dying. Now, I know a lot of people obviously sponsor with sitting down and reading it and sharing their experience with it, but the experience I got at that moment was, in a matter of very short couple of weeks, we walked through the 12 steps. I had an men's list. I had an amazing, tremendous 5th-step experience. We did 5, 6, 7, and 8 all in one shot. And I was like walking around at meetings lit up like a Christmas tree going, guys, I had no idea. And I'm like reading this character defects list in my 3-minute share in the meeting, and people are looking at me like I'm literally an insane person. And I probably was. I was the guy, what is it, spiritual intoxication that we talk about in like the family afterward, 2 wives. But I had a real experience with the 12 steps, and I got really fired up about wanting to help people. And that was what I think drew me in with the old timers and the long timers. I would hear those speaker tapes, and I would hear the guy with like 40 years sober talking about, watching this guy go from being homeless to like having a family and being 20 years sober and helping others. And I just said, I want that. Like, that's what got me, was this idea that like the whole goal of this program is so I can go help somebody else. And that's kind of what the turn is for the last 2 sessions here, as we start getting an opportunity to look at, well, what's my real job here? Okay. Oh, we don't have the steps up. I was going to point at the steps. We don't have the steps. I've admitted I'm powerless over alcohol. My life's unmanageable. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I did make a decision to turn my will and my life over to God as I understand Him. I made that searching and fearless moral inventory. I shared it with somebody else. I shared it with God, myself, and my fellows. I've become willing, and I'm actively trying to become willing to let go of these defects. I'm asking God to change me. I'm actively going out and trying to repair the damage. Now what? What is this all for? Is this so I can pat myself on the back and go live a big, wonderful life? And luckily, he said, look, the whole deal here is you do this program, and my job is to make sure you're crystal clear. At every one of these steps, you need to have direct experience to be able to share, because in AA, we don't share our opinion, strength, and hope. We share our experience, strength, and hope. So it doesn't matter what you think about any of this stuff. It just matters what you've done and what has happened. And good news is your experience is just as valid as anybody else's. So it's not a competition of whose amends were bigger or who had the bigger inventory. It's just about, have you taken these actions and can you sit down and show them to somebody else? That's it. And when we got to 10 and 11, at that moment, we read through this stuff in the book, and Ron just said, okay, you do that now every day. But that was kind of it. And what I can tell you is for the next, year and a half, my practice of 10 and 11 was basically non-existent. Because the only real conversation we had was, okay, you do this every day. We read these 4 pages or whatever. He said, that's your plan of life. And I really struggled with it. Well, not that I really struggled with it. I just said, okay. And then, life was getting big, and I was doing stuff, and I just kind of let it be. I want to read. Well, no, we'll just talk about it. I don't need to read it. I'm going to do this a little out of order. I feel like in the beginning, my experience with steps 10 and 11, step 11 in the morning was the easiest implementation. And that's been the most consistent practice I've had for about a decade now. And so our book gives us, remember at the beginning, and maybe if those of you are new, there's that whole part where they say, further on, clear-cut directions on how we have recovered are going to be laid out in this book. And you'll notice that step 1 they don't really italicize and give you a clear step one. On page 30, they say when we admit to our innermost selves we're alcoholic, that's the first step in recovery, but it's no italics or anything like that. Step 2 is a little amorphous. They give you a couple of different questions, and then there's some more questions in the chapter of the agnostic, but there's no italicized, this is step 2. But when you get into how it works, it says this is what brings us to step 3, or the third, and it's like italics. And then every step up through those 2 chapters, how it works and into action, every single time we get to the next step, they italicize, and now this brings us to the 4th step, or the 5th step. This brings us to step 6. You've now completed step 7. And so it becomes, hopefully, very clear. If you're just following, where are they italicizing this stuff and what's the direction? And so they get to step 10. And then they get to step 11. And I don't know where it happened. And this is going to be, how do I say this? If you're doing anything that we're going to talk about with what the mechanics of these 2 steps are, you're winning. 90%, if not more, of the people that are sitting around in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you take a look at the totality of Alcoholics Anonymous, are not doing this stuff. And I don't say that to sound, I just say that because my experience. If you actually ask people, well, what does your morning practice look like? What does your evening review look like? And no one's going to do it perfect. And anyone who gets up here and says, for 20 years I've done, it's like, come on. We were out in Colorado, my buddy Chad, we're driving up to get some food, and he's like, what panel's next? I go, oh, it's 11. He goes, oh, that's the one where they're all going to lie to everybody, isn't it? So it's not about, never missing a day, right? But I would just offer that, in my own personal experiences, this was really difficult to establish a daily practice, and it's been helped by a lot of failure. And I've seen the necessity of really trying to adhere to this stuff every day. But somewhere along the line, and maybe you guys have experienced this, the apps came out. And now my app says I'm going to do a nightly 10-step. And I don't know what that is, y'all. Because when I'm in my book, it tells me step 10 is a through-the-day process of watching what's going on within me. And then when it gets over to, now let's talk about step 11, is where they introduce the evening review and the morning prayer and meditation. And step 11 also talks about watching through the day, pausing when you're agitated and doubtful, and tells us we should go read a bunch of other stuff and really just go on this journey of seeking a relationship with our Creator, the God of our understanding. And so I don't mean to, like I said, if you're doing any of this stuff, win, right? But for my purpose, I think it's really important that we just get clear. Because there's people that might be sitting here that are going, well, I've been doing that 10-step on that for 3 years. What is he talking about? Right? And to me, that's dangerous. Because when we're new, we're not all here. And if we as a fellowship seem to be disagreeing upon what our program is, then how as a fellowship are we able to have the unity to really carry a message of clarity to somebody who stumbles in off the street? And so if amongst ourselves we can't even agree on what this stuff is, to me that just makes me sad. And so I offer that because as I said, I don't really care. If you call it a nightly 10th step, whatever. I'm not going to, there's no AA police. But when I come to this stuff, I go, man, how do we make this clear for everybody? Wouldn't it be nice if we could agree on what this is? And then you go, oh, well, this book actually says we have a way out on which we can absolutely agree. And it's laid out in this really simple, clear way. But so I want to talk about 11 first. They start with when we retire at night. They say, look, we're going to talk about prayer and meditation. And first, let me just say, so step 10, if you were to read it off the shade, it says we continued to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admitted it. Followed by step 11, which says we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And I'll hopefully get back to that because I found an amazing practice of just trying to read step 11 and go, am I actually just praying for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry that out? Or how crazy are my prayers getting? I sometimes will notice all sorts of stuff's going on in prayer. And I'm like, wait a sec, this doesn't really sound like I'm just praying for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry that out. We're going off to La La Land in the prayer in the morning. But so I've had, to me that's like, what a great limitation. What if it really was that simple? What if my job in the 11th step was just to get quiet and go, God, would you please allow me to see what your will is for me today and allow me the strength and the courage to go out and be the man that you've intended for me to be. And then get quiet. That's hard for me. I have a lot more in my mind. I got things going on. We gotta, do stuff. But so when you look at how 11 is laid out in the literature, it starts with the evening, then it goes to the morning, then it talks about as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful, and then they have this whole amazing set of promises that I'm going to hopefully get to at the end around intuition and intuitive thought. And if you've been following along, every one of us, and Anthony said it, so we're mentally ill. And so how many times do you hear people come into AA and they go, oh man, I came for my drinking, I stayed for my thinking. Or however many years of sobriety, we're laying off the responsibility of bad behavior on the fact that we have alcoholism. And we're like, oh, well, I would have done better and not hit that guy at the meeting, but, I'm an alcoholic. I got messed up thinking. I like that. That's a good rationalization. I don't want a good scapegoat for any of my bad behavior. The book says, though, if I'm actually willing to start living this stuff, that I'll be able to start using my brain. That I will be able to start trusting my thinking. That actually my thought life will be placed on a plane of inspiration. That I'm not always going to be inspired, especially in the beginning, but they basically give you the promise that when you came in here and we said, don't trust your thinking, that's like a temporary thing. But if you actually end up living this program a day at a time, and you actually start having this experience of becoming the channel and allowing God to work in and through you, you will find that quiet inner voice is much more on the money than it ever was. And then you'll be able to hear the loud ego mind going nuts and start being able to hear the difference. That's been my experience. I still have a crazy mind. The gift that I have today is I'm usually sitting in a position throughout a good chunk of my day where I'm watching it going, God, that thing is insane. I'll get all quiet, do my morning prayer meditation, and then I'll get in the car, and so there's a road by my house. And I don't know why it should bother me, because it's like I have the cheat code for this series of blocks. They painted the right lane red, and it says bus lane. Nobody drives in it ever. Because painted red, like don't drive here. But then at the corner, there's a little sign that says 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And nobody reads that sign. So between Empire Boulevard and Eastern Parkway, it's bumper-to-bumper traffic in the left lane. And the right lane is the bus lane, and it's wide open. And it says from 7 to 10, it's bus lane, and from 4 to 7, it's bus lane. So from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m., that is a lane that you can drive in. And nobody uses it, except for me. And I used to look at people and I go, man, this guy thinks he's important. And then I saw the sign and I was like, oh my God, I can get in this lane. Like legally, I can get in there. But what will happen is people will try to turn right in front of my car from the left lane. And so I will start driving and I've got places to be and I'm getting there and they're in bumper to bumper traffic and I'm going, yeah, these suckers. And then someone just like right in front of me, and it's like, I go from being Mr. Spiritual to like I'm planning a murder in the middle of the road. And so these days now it's like I'm not honking and flipping people off and screaming. It's like I have this disconnect and I go, oh, there I am. There's that thing. Instantly, 10 minutes after this wonderful Zen prayer meditation and my coffee and my morning routine, feeling good, and not even 5 minutes out my front door. And we're going, And so I laugh at that today. And I'm given, I think, the gift of what this has given me is I'm able to kind of watch that today. So, mechanically, for me, 11 looks like there's a moment in the evening where I need to look at my day. Now, we were here talking about inventory. We were talking about, okay, where's my selfishness, my self-seeking, my dishonesty, the fear. I mean, we're looking at resentment as a whole. We're looking at how we treated God's kids and intimate relationships. You get to the evening review, it's like, where was I selfish, dishonest, resentful, and afraid? Look similar, right? Yeah, it's the same. Let's look for those things. How did I do? It says, do we owe an apology? Have I kept something to myself that should be discussed with someone else immediately? Was I kind and loving towards all? What could I have done better? Was I thinking of myself? Or was I thinking about you and what I could pack into the stream of life? And so those questions To me, I remember talking to my current sponsor. I said, Mike, what does this look like for you? And I've gone through periods where I was writing every single night the answer to these questions. I can't remember who else talked about this. But that became an ego-feeding proposition. That became me worshiping, I'm going to do this every day so I can go and tell them that I'm doing it every day. And there was no God in that. It was just about me doing it so I could be better than you. I'm doing it for real. And so I would notice that was taking hold. And I also noticed the literature doesn't say we write it. Back to clear-cut directions. When you're in that 4-step, it says we listed it for us in black and white. We got them all down on paper. Like, they make it very clear when writing is a guarantee. But the evening review doesn't say anything about writing it. I did that because people said, I wrote this and I had this experience. I said, let me try that. And then I enjoyed it. After writing it for a bunch, feeling like there was no spirit in it, I started just sitting quietly and trying to give myself a meditation when I got home. I talked to my current sponsor. I said, Mike, what does an evening review look like for you? And he goes, well, it's kind of like I do a Google Earth view of Mike for the day. I try to zoom all the way out and just think about how I actually lived through the world and how I treated people, the interactions that I had, the phone calls I might have had, anywhere I went, anything I felt. And I try to kind of give myself an image of, like, if somebody had that on CCTV and they could just zero through my whole day, would I be embarrassed about anything? Would I be ashamed about anything? Have I been doing anything that I feel like is maybe wrong? And I use those questions as a way to kind of give me some guidance through that. And I think that's been great. That's kind of more what I've been doing recently. I just try to think about my day as a whole. Where was I resentful? Was I resentful? Was I selfish? Was I dishonest? Was I afraid? Do I have to have a conversation with someone I'm avoiding? Do I owe an apology because I was wrong? Come on. Was I kind and loving towards all? Is anybody really saying, like, yes, every single day? Like, no. Especially, it might be my actions, but when I go to here, the thing's still going. I'm still judging. I'm still prideful. I'm still arrogant. I'm indignant. But they say this is a constructive review. This isn't destructive. They say be careful not to drift into worry, morbid reflection, or remorse. Why? That's going to diminish my usefulness to God and the people about me. At this point in the program, this is all about how can I go out and be of maximum service to the God and the people about me. They give us a job. They say, hey, your next function here, when you get to step 10, is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And later on, they talk about staying in fit spiritual condition. And if my job is to grow, is it possible that what fit spiritual condition looks like for me is an active attitude of moving closer to God? I kind of feel like we're on a treadmill. Treadmill, if it's actually going, you have to keep moving. And if you stop, what's going to happen? You're going to get flung off the back. And so it kind of feels like if I'm actively practicing this program, it's like I got on that treadmill and I turned the volume or the speed way down. I could walk on this thing, we're good, we're chilling. If I stop doing these things, it's like my ego comes in and starts ratcheting up that volume, or the speed rather. And now I'm running and I'm kind of like, this is getting a little tough. And if I just stop, I really get thrown. And so from where I sit, it's very clear. I'm either moving closer to God or I'm moving closer to a drink. There is no base camp here. And someone pointed out, they go, hey, we talk about this. You have alcoholism. That's an active, progressive, fatal illness. What does active mean? What does progressive mean? If I have an illness that's progressive, but is able to be arrested, does that mean that it's going to start where I ended? No, it means that it's going to be moving and growing the whole time. So it's possible that where I stand today, my alcoholism is as powerful and as insane as it's ever been because it's still progressing within me. And so in order to keep pace with that, I have to have an attitude of spiritual growth, not spiritual complacency. I can't just sit around and stop. And so that's what I think this practice of 10 and 11, which by my estimation is you're doing all these steps all the time. When I wake up, so we have the evening. I think it's interesting they start with the evening and 11. For me, it was suggested that the last sentence, which they didn't say, is they go, we ask God for forgiveness for where we've fallen short, and we inquire what corrective measures could be taken or should be taken. And then it says, on awakening. Again, this is still in the 11th step stuff. On awakening, we consider our plans for the day. And they talk about how we should pray. We should ask God to remove us self-pitying, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. And then it says, on that basis of asking for these things to be removed, we can actually use our brains with assurance, for God gave us brains to use. But this is clearing out our selfish motives and allowing God to take that over. So in the morning, it doesn't say write, but I like writing in the morning. I believe that part of this deal with 11 is it is an individual journey. So I would encourage you to try all of it. Find out what works for you. I think the clarity is in the evening, ask these questions, have a review of my day, and in the morning, I need to take some time and really deepen this relationship with God. That's the most important thing in my entire life. I think Anthony talked about when the vertical is intact, the horizontal sorts itself out. Like, if my relationship with God is right, then my relationship with you is right. And you could look at this the other way. Remember in the second step in the chapter of the agnostic when they suggest that we have one choice. And one of my heroes once said, what if this is the only bit of free will we ever have? Kind of like that as a consideration. What if our only choice here is I make a choice that God is everything or God is nothing? So if I choose God is everything, because as an alcoholic, God better be here. There better be some power because we've established I'm powerless. If God is everything, that means that you are all part of God. I'm a part of God. That we are everything. There's nothing separate from everything. And isn't it interesting that when I'm looking in the evening, and when I'm trying to watch when we get into 10 through the day, which is basically all that stuff I'm looking for in the evening, in real time, those are all the things that separate me from you. Which, said in another way, that's all the things that separate me from God. That's the way that my ego shows up and starts taking me down the road of self rather than leaving me in the world of the Spirit. So, in the morning, yeah, I need to take a moment and get with God. My buddy, my sponsor goes, if you've ever wanted to develop an actual relationship with someone, how much time did you spend pursuing that person? If you wanted to have a real meaningful connection with someone, do you just call them and say, like, what's up, bro? All right, I'll catch you later. Is that going to really turn into a meaningful relationship? I don't think so. My wife and I started dating, and we talked to each other every single day. And we wanted to see each other as often as possible. And we spent a lot of time together. And we've been living together for 11 years now or something crazy. And we spend time together. And we keep developing that relationship. And it's like, is it possible that that's what part of this morning practice is? That I need to actually spend time, conscious time, active, participating in trying to deepen this connection. They talk about we're here to improve our conscious contact, not unconscious contact. What would unconscious contact with God look like? I just assume it's there and don't really think about it. What does conscious look like? I'm making an actual concerted effort to seek power, to deepen this relationship. My experience, that doesn't come through prayer. That comes through sitting quiet in meditation. Mike gave me, I'm going to butcher it, but it's so funny. He was like, can you just imagine if you were God for a moment and all these drunks start waking up and, oh God, please help me from all this stuff. He's like, can you imagine how annoying and obnoxious listening to all these self-centered prayers all the time are? And I said, well, Mike, what does your prayer look like today? And he goes, my prayer looks really simple. He goes, God, I love you. Is it possible that maybe the attitude I should be taking to God is an attitude of gratitude? And I hate that, so corny. But it's like, think about it. I need to maybe wake up and go, wow, look at all the stuff I have. I always can make a case where I don't have enough stuff, right? I need more things, more status, more recognition, more material stuff, whatever it is. How often do I actually get that moment of reflection and realize all the gifts that were given to me? How often do I take for granted all of these things that I get just because I was born in this country to a certain type of economic and socio background? Like nothing that I had to do with anything. So I'll share this with you because it was recent. I work as a performer for a living. I get to play music for a living, which is totally insane. And currently I get to play in the theater district in Manhattan, which is also totally insane. Not anything I ever thought I would ever do. Not something I ever tried to do. Just the phone rang one day and said, do you want to do this or try? I said, okay, and they haven't fired me yet, so. And in this particular show, I'm actually on stage a little bit. So I can see the theater and the audience. It's like 1,400 people or something. And 2 weeks ago, we did an autistic-friendly show. And it wasn't open to the public. It's some civic, some nonprofit that does the whole thing. And we have a prologue, which means people start walking out before the final announcement. And I go out at 3 minutes. And, it just took a lot longer to get everybody seated with that audience. And so we were out there for like 10, 15 minutes, which was way longer than normal before the show started. And I got a chance to just look at the audience. And then curtain goes up and the show starts and I start playing. And I got so overwhelmed that I was like literally like, okay, dude, you gotta keep it together. Like you gotta go play. Like you have to keep it together and stop crying. And here's what I saw. The realization that I got was, here I am at work. I just hope I can do this last gig of the week and I can go chill. And I looked down and I go, half of this audience could not even conceive of what I get to do every single day. I have legs that work. I have hands that work. I have a mind that's work. I have all sorts of stuff. I have health to the best of my ability. I just came out of the chute with this. And these people weren't given that opportunity. And how often I just take it for granted. And then I started thinking about the parents and the decision that it must have been for them to have a child. And probably their aspiration was to have a healthy baby. And I had no idea what their lives would look like to be the parent. And I just kind of got overwhelmed that I wanted to give them this experience. And I wanted to be there to be of service to them and to allow the families an opportunity to hang out and to be able to give the people that were on the spectrum an opportunity to see a show. And I was so struck with the reality of like, I've been given so much. And I will go out here and just blow through life like a bat out of hell with callous disregard for everybody around me if I don't check this stuff. When they talk about intuition becomes a working part of the mind, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's happening to me these days. It's like I'm literally seeing the world through a different set of eyes. And that's only, to me, this is like the long game of what this practice is about. I came in here, I want to drink 3 shots, 4 shots, and feel it immediately. When you need relief, it's like, give me a beer and a shot. We're getting after it. And I get that immediate 5-minute window where life makes sense. But by doing this stuff and committing to it a day at a time and trying my best, which again, my best, I was talking to Bart, my sponsor, for a long time about this, and he said, look, we have a spiritual practice. He goes, let me ask you a question. When you started playing drums, how good were you? I was like, I sucked. And he goes, what'd you do? I said, well, I practiced. He goes, how long did that take before someone started paying you to play your instrument? I was like, oh God, it's like 50, a lot of years. He goes, is it possible that that's what we're doing here? That a day at a time, our job here is to show up and try to practice living a spiritual life. And admittedly, some days you get to the end of that review and you look and you go, man, I practiced pretty well today. All right. And some days it's like we're hanging on for dear life. But that's not what's important here. It's not a failure if I'm struggling. It's not the win condition here is, am I willing to adhere to this stuff and keep doing it? So I have a morning practice. Right now it looks like I write corrective. I think about what came up yesterday. I write that stuff down in the morning, first thing in the morning, because I want to try to think about where I fell short yesterday today, so that hopefully I can start seeing some progress here and some growth. They talk about our plans for the day. Well, I have a calendar. I never had a calendar. Now I have to have a calendar because I have stuff going on. So I look at my calendar and I look at what I have to do. And there's a great AA out of Colorado Springs, who's a Native American guy, and he suggested once that maybe in my plans for the day, it shouldn't just be the to-do list, but what about the to-be list? He goes, do you ever sit down and consider the kind of principles you'd like to embody in your relationships with the world? And so what I'll do is I'll write a column down the middle, and I'll write to-do over here, and I'll list all the things I got to do, and then I'll write the to-be list, and I'll consider, if I was able to, what kind of principles would I like to try to embody in this world? And it looks a lot like that sex conduct ideal. It looks a lot like the principles you see throughout our traditions, the stuff that we learn in our steps about being forgiving and loving and patient and tolerant and kind. And I just try to get all that down, and then I sit quietly. And I try to really just breathe. And some people like guided meditations, sounds, I don't care, whatever. For me, it's just silence. And I just try to take some deep breaths. And then they tell me I'm supposed to conclude that period with a prayer that I'd be shown all through the day what my next step is to be. And so I do that. And there might be some other prayers that happen, like a 7th step or whatever. And so for a good chunk of time, those were rocking. Every morning, every night. And I started noticing that every night I was writing the same stuff down. You ever had that one? You review your day, and it's like every day I hit the same pothole every time. It's like I don't learn anything. And it hit me like, oh, duh. I had no practice of step 10. To me, I think the 10th step has been the most difficult to actually try to weave into my life. Because it requires a lot of attention. It actually requires perfect attention. What it says in step 10 is continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. So same stuff we're reviewing in the evening, same stuff that I'm looking at inventory. When these crop up, which is a promise, we are human beings. I love that, it's like we're not saints in the sense that we're perfect. I'm a human being. I'm going to get selfish. As long as I'm breathing and can think about tomorrow, I will be afraid of something. I don't know if you guys relate, but fear is like down the road. There's always something coming. Selfishness shows up in all kinds of ways. I get self-righteous. God, that one sucks. Anybody just pride? It's like, can we just stop? I just don't want to be spiteful. I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to be indifferent, intolerant, but that stuff just shows up all the time. I got to watch for those things. Am I starting to get dishonest and cut corners? Am I noticing rationalization is starting to creep in? Starting to justify behavior that I think is not justifiable because I have a good motive attached to it. So watch for these things. Am I getting angry? Pause. The first thing it says to do is go ask God at once to remove these things. Pretty clear. And it says we tell someone immediately. Now, if you're in a business meeting and the guy you are getting resentful at is standing up there giving a presentation and kind of calling you out, you're not going to be able to stand up and go, excuse me, sir, I need him immediately, and walk out of the room. Like, the rest of the world doesn't care that I'm going to do a 10-step, But I'll tell you, because I sponsor a decent chunk of people, and through the years have sponsored a decent chunk of people, my phone doesn't stop ringing. And so as I'm living in the day, the sponsees are getting the 10 steps. They're getting a lot of the immediate stuff. I talk to my sponsor once a week, and anything that showed up there, he's getting. I have a group of guys that we get together usually once a month, and we do like an entire deep dive through our whole lives, like going into finances and marriages and relationships and career and AA stuff. And those guys, I get to be accountable to a couple of different groups of people to really make sure this is cool. But it's the sponsees that are getting the immediates. Because I'm living in the world, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm not above anybody because I've got some time sober, and I know I can read the book. Like being able to quote this thing doesn't mean anything. I just have a mind that remembers stuff. So what? I'm an alcoholic, and I need to live this program, or I will drink and die. And so when the guy who's got 6 days is calling, and I'm like, oh, let me run this by you really quick and tell you what's going on, he's going, what? But like people that I was asking to be sponsored did that to me. And my current sponsor, Mike, talks about the 10th step as a wonderful tool for 12-step work. Someone new comes into your group and they hear you guys talking about all this stuff. Get their number and you get a 10th step in the middle of the week. Call the new guy. What do you have to lose? What, to tarnish your image? Who cares? But if they see that you're actually doing it and you're confiding in them, that might hook them to come back. Then they might go as a new person and go, man, I guess they actually do this stuff. They're not just talking about it. It can level that playing field. Then I gotta say, okay, look at your conduct. Do you do anything wrong? Do you have to own amends? And I think you said it. We don't talk about forgiveness much. It didn't make the big hook. It wasn't in there much. But when we say the world and its people are often quite wrong, there's times where people just do things to me, and it's like, wow, I was out of left field. What was that? And I would say that if I've done nothing wrong and I don't owe an apology and I can run that by somebody and we're clear, then the spiritual action on the opposite of that is I have to forgive them. Like that's spiritually what I would have to do there is can I accept that this happened and forgive them and look for maybe they're hurt in some other way. I don't like their symptoms the way they disturb me. Maybe they got something going on I don't know about. Maybe I pray for that guy or that lady. And then they tell us that the most important thing is we turn our thoughts to others we could help. Notice they say, doesn't say go run and help people. It says turn your thoughts. You can read it like this, stop thinking about yourself. Easy. My problem is all I can do is think about me. At the end of the 10th step, they go, hey, stop thinking about you. That's the problem. It's all you can think about. Just stop that. Cut that out. So for me, this is like practical. I'm going through the world. My job is to watch when I get disturbed. When do I notice that I want to hit that text message back? Or I want to immediately, I think you talk about exploding. When is it that I'm starting to notice my shoulders are rising, the blood's going? Can I just start watching for that? Is it possible that I might have warning signs within me that will allow me to see the progression between I'm slightly irritated to I'm full-blown angry and hateful? If I start waking up and being willing to do this all through the day and watch, that's what's happened to me. It's like the volume's been starting to get turned on. I'm able to see things quicker. So I only have a couple of minutes here, but there's a book called Unpopular Practices in the Last 3 Steps, and it's written by some AA people, and they wrote it anonymously, and clearly they're from the South and the Bible Belt, but they make a really good point. This whole business of self-examination we call inventory. None of this is ever about our morality. And I would encourage you to take a look at, do I look at inventory on the basis of morality? Because the way it's brought in our literature in the big book is it's all about selfishness. I don't know what's right or wrong. I can't see the truth about me. I can't see the truth about you. Is it possible that all I need to do is find out where my selfishness is and keep it as simple as it was said earlier, that it's the selfishness that will kill me? And I don't have the power to choose what's right or wrong. I don't have the power to take the next right action. All this stuff that started showing up that I don't see anywhere in here. This thing says, go to God. Pray. Take a look and find out if you've got selfishness going on within you, because if you're an alcoholic who has alcoholism, selfishness is what's going to kill you. It'll eventually be alcohol or a bullet or whatever, but it's the selfishness and the self-centeredness that's going to kill you. And that's what Bill said. He goes, simple, not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant the destruction of self-centeredness. These 2 steps give me a real clear practice of how to hopefully battle my own self-centeredness a day at a time. And we read it, I can't remember, Tom read my whole talk, which was the line that I think spiritually underpins all of this, which is every day is a day when we must bring the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. And I've thought about that line a lot, and I talk about it with the guys I sponsor, and there's no wiggle room in there. I don't like that. When is every day? Is that like including bank holidays and my birthday? What if I must bring, okay, this isn't a suggestion anymore. Remember, it's a suggested program, right? But every day I must bring. What? What do I must bring? The vision of God's will. Into not some, but all. Does that include the bedroom? Does that include all, we have all. All's pretty clear. And to me, that's a perfect ideal. But I believe that that's what we're asked to aim at. Bill talks about it in the 6th step and the 12 and 12. He says we must raise our eyes toward perfection, knowing we'll full well never get there. But why not try to get as close as I can? We said it earlier. How free do you want to be? So I'm going to close with this. The foreword of the 12 and 12 says AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which if practiced as a way of life can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. And if you get into the 10th step, it starts to tell us that we've been put in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. That the problem of this drinking thing is just removed. Not that we think about it differently, it's just gone. That we've ceased fighting anything or anybody, even alcohol. And so you can get to this place where you can actually be at peace with yourself. However, unless each AA member follows to the best of his ability our suggested 12 steps to recovery, he almost certainly signs his own death warrant. His drunkenness and disillusion are not penalties inflicted by people in authority. They result from his own personal disobedience to spiritual principles. We don't drink if you've been sober for a while because of other people. We drink because we become disobedient to what's told to do. Are you willing to wake up and try? Just try to seek a deeper relationship with God, to watch through the day, to take ownership when you're starting to go crazy, to be able to admit your faults and live a transparent life to the best of your ability today. And then at the evening, if you blew it all up, are you just willing to at least sit down and go, man, I really screwed up today? And then maybe tomorrow you'll be able to wake up and think about all those corrective measures that might have come up and try again. For me, that's been a journey of amazing growth. It tells us to go read a bunch of other books, look where other people are right. It's a way big practice of open-mindedness. And I just hope you get excited and curious. Like, go get spiritually curious if you're here. Read a bunch of stuff, go on retreats, talk to all of us. Like, do this thing. You know, the life that I get to live today is totally insane. It does not make any sense to me. Because I came here broken, suicidal, like there's no hope for a guy like me. And I get to go all over the world and do all kinds of things that I shouldn't be able to do. And it's really been because I simply said, I'm broken, I don't know what to do. Will you please help me? And the unconditional love that is God and Alcoholics Anonymous came up and said, here's how we live a day at a time. And to me, steps 10 and 11 prepare us so that we can have the channel open, so we can get to what Julie's going to talk to us about, which is the real work of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is trying to go find someone like us and let them know that they don't ever have to take a drink ever again if they don't want to. That if you're here and you're suffering, welcome. That you don't have to suffer alone, and after a while you can actually become happily and usefully whole. Thanks for letting me share.